Northern Premier Division, done. Southern Premier Division, done. Tier 4, everything's still to play for. Yes, hello and welcome to this week's Women's Football Chats. This is the show dedicated to the third and fourth tiers of women's football here in England. That's the FA Women's National League. Now, there is so much to go through on this week's show that we are going to crack straight on with things, because as we're nearing the end of the season, there's lots of ups, lots of downs, lots of news to talk about. So we will crack straight on. Of course, if you want to keep up to date with everything to do with the FAWNL, then at WFootballChat on Twitter is the place to be, the new home of this show. And that's where I'll be posting pretty much every day with bits and pieces from the FAWNL. We're going to start them with some of the new teams that are going to be in the FAWNL next season. One of those only left last year. That's Watford. They have been relegated back into the FAWNL Southern Premier Division after they were defeated on the weekend. So they're back into the Southern Premier Division. Two new teams, though, in to the FAWNL for next season. Firstly, Division 1 Southwest, Bournemouth Sports, who have won their league in their Tier 5, their regional Premier Division. So Bournemouth Sports will be in Division 1 Southwest next season. Could be a real hotbed there for FAWNL teams, if you imagine. Bournemouth Sports, Bournemouth potentially if they don't go up, Moneyfield's in that kind of area, Southampton Women's around that kind of area as well potentially if they don't go down. It could be a real hotbed. And then extremely likely to be in Division 1 Midlands rather than Division 1 North, Lincoln United, who won the East Midlands Regional Women's Football League. The reason I say likely Midlands, not North, is because of teams moving about between the two leagues, possibly. But it is a very big possibly at the moment. They had a perfect 15 out of 15 and won the East Midlands Premier Division, East Midlands Regional Women's Football League Premier Division. Long title. So they got themselves into Tier 4 for next season. So, as I said, plenty of teams coming and going. We've also had promotions and relegations from within the FAWNL. Haven't brought those up just yet because we'll look at those, see when we go through the results and the tables. Also then, we're now in mid-April. We have had Manager of the Month for March. And Manager of the Month in Tier 4 goes to Andy Mulligan of Sporting Cowser. Cowser won 6 out of 6 in March, scoring 22 and conceding just 5. They are in that huge title fight with Loughborough Lightning. Get onto that a little bit later on. But super month for Sporting Cowser. And then in Tier 3, Siobhan Hodgett-Still of West Bromwich Albion. They were scrapping towards the bottom of the table, in and amongst the relegation zone, had a really good March and got themselves firmly into mid-table. So there is a superb amount of progress there from West Brom, and they are rewarded with Manager of the Month. One more big bit of news then to talk about prior to the show. A few other bits and pieces that I'll dot in and about. But Richard Wood has made the decision to leave his role as manager of Southampton, of Swindon Town Women. Swindon Town Women with immediate effect. This is after they won the County Cup on Sunday. It says Wood stepped up to the role following the departure of Mike Cook in September, and after a successful season which saw Town sit in 4th place in the FAWNL and claim the Wiltshire County Cup. He's decided to leave the club positively. Assistant manager Johnny House, goalkeeping coach Dave Tomlinson and player coach Georgia Clifford will lead the team for the remaining 2 games of the season, which are away at Abingdon and away at Torquay. I do apologise if you hear any slight interference. The window cleaner is currently here and he's currently doing the study window. Yeah, so that's a leaving manager there, but right towards the end of the season, gives them time to try and find somebody in. It's not like Swindon have got anything left still to play for. So in terms of news to go on at the start of the show, it's kind of about it from this week. So let's crack straight on then with the Northern Premier Division. Results in this one, we've got 2 from Thursday night, first of all, with Huddersfield Town losing 2-0 to Nottingham Forest. Both these goals coming in the final half an hour. Freya Thomas in the 61st minute, Sophie Domingo in the 80th minute, with the win for Forest. And Liverpool Feds 1, Stoke City 1. It was Stoke who took the lead in this one through Saffron Jordan in the 22nd minute. Liverpool Feds equalising before half-time. Now, here's the interesting thing. We've got one source that says they equalised on the half-hour mark, one source that says they scored on 41 minutes. Regardless, Paige Cole scoring in the first half, 1-1 the final score there. Put a lot of emphasis on the weekend. It meant Huddersfield had to win at the weekend in order to survive, as did AFC Fylde, but they fell by 3-0 to Wolves, and Fylde, who were hanging in there relatively well, just 1 goal down after Summer Holmes scored in the first half, but it was made a lot harder for them when Lois Moore in the second half, with still 24 minutes to go, saw a second yellow card. She got sent off. And then Amber Hughes in the 79th minute and Eloise Wilson in the 83rd minute really hammered home the advantage for Wolves, and Fylde end up down into Tier 4 next season. Good win for Halifax, winning 1-0 against Derby. Drew Green in the 21st minute with the only goal of the game. Derby missed a penalty in that game as well. And then Huddersfield Town, they had to win against Newcastle in order to avoid relegation. Newcastle, though, knew that a win would see them into the Championship for next season. And boy, did they do it emphatically. A 10-0 victory in front of nearly 7,400 fans. Meant the Newcastle United are up. Goals coming just 15 seconds, not 15 minutes, 15 seconds into the game. Emma Kelly opening the scoring. She would then get her second on the 22nd minute. Bethany Lumsden in the 18th and the 54th minute getting a brace. Also a brace for Katie Barker, 45th and 51st. One then as well for Jasmine McQuaid, 73rd. Charlotte Potts, 75th. Casey Elson 82nd and Georgia Gibson 90+1. One of those sort of games really where it finished 10-0, great. You kind of got the idea by the 25-minute mark with Newcastle 3-0 up that it was turning into a bit of a promotion party. So Newcastle beating Huddersfield by 10-0 in front of nearly 7,500 at Kingston Park. Elsewhere, a bit of a surprise result at Stoke, where they beat Burnley by 1-0, an own goal in the 54th minute, the only difference between those two sides. And Liverpool Feds narrowly beating Stourbridge by 3-2 away from home. Feds had taken the lead in this one. Bit of a back and forth game. Rosie Kinvig in the 2nd minute. Rosanna Embley equalised for Stourbridge in the 25th. Feds go back in front again. Alicia Collins in the 38th. Favour Omenazu in the 43rd gets one back for Stourbridge again, and it's 2-2 at half time. They play out most of the second half at 2-2. And then Katie Anderson in the 91st minute gets the go-ahead goal for Liverpool Feds, and they win by 3-2. Northern Premier Division table then, with that in mind, is all done. Newcastle are up into the Championship, leading by 10 points over Burnley. Burnley just with 2 games left to play. They are 11 points clear of Forest. Forest have 3 games left to play, so it's the battle for second place between those two sides. Wolves can get to 47, but they would need to win all 4 of their remaining games and hope Burnley and Forest don't in order to take second spot. But realistically, the top 4, with Stoke being so far back of Wolves, the top 4 is the 4 that we were expecting going into the season, and so it has proven to be. Might be a slightly different order of second, third and fourth, but I think everybody expected Newcastle to get themselves promoted going fully pro. And then moving further down then, so the 2 relegations also decided. AFC Fylde and Huddersfield Town are both getting relegated. You would expect them probably both to go into Division 1 North, but then you rely on, okay, well, who's going to then move down from Division 1 North into the Division 1 Midlands if you've got 2 teams from the North moving down. Now, Huddersfield Town are further north than some of the sides that currently play in the north. They are further north than Stockport, they are further north than Barnsley, and they are further north than FC United of Manchester, although it is likely FC United of Manchester will also get relegated. So they are further north than Stockport County and Barnsley. So it may well be that Barnsley end up dropping down a league. You've got, obviously, as I said, Lincoln United coming up. I say down a league, I mean from the north down the country into the Midlands, not obviously getting relegated from a Barnsley women's point of view. So I suspect we will see some movement, as we probably will in the Southern Premier Division into the Northern Premier Division. We've discussed that before with Rugby Borough moving up. So that I expect to see, I know it's sometimes you see the odd, 1 or 2, but I expect to see quite a few this year. So really, the Northern Premier Division is done. Stourbridge survive in their first year in Tier 3. They are, quite a way adrift of the rest of the pack, but they have stayed above that bottom 2. Newcastle did what everybody expected, and you're seeing that sort of movement between the teams that are putting a lot of money in towards the top and the ones that can't down towards the bottom. That's a talking point we'll have coming up later on in this show. But yeah, so that's the Northern Premier Division. Let's move through into the Southern Premier Division. This won't take very long. Just one result. Ipswich Town beating #United by 2-0. And this was important because #United had to win this game. Natasha Thomas in the 69th minute and Ruby Doe in the 90+6th minute meant Ipswich Town beat #United by 2-0, and that has crowned Portsmouth as the champions of the Southern Premier Division. They will be playing in the Championship next season. #United had to win to extend this title race by another week. They failed to do so, and that means that Portsmouth will not be in the FAWNL or play a part of this show next season. So the Southern Premier Division, everyone has now played 20 games. Chatham and London were down already. Portsmouth have got themselves promoted into the Championship. So with that being said, we'll move quickly through into the more interesting tier at the present time, which is Tier 4, because there is so much still to play for across these 4 divisions. So Division 1 Midlands, Peterborough United 2, Northampton Town 1. A late winning goal here for Peterborough. Evie Driscoll-King had put them in front on the 19th minute. Jade Bell had then equalised for Northampton. Looked as though it was going to finish 1-1, but Renee Bennett in the 94th minute put Peterborough ahead. They were able to see the game out and take the 3 points. It keeps alive a very, very slim chance of getting promoted into the Northern Premier Division. And towards the bottom, big game, Sheffield 1, Leek Town 0. Sadie Smith with the goal on the 68th minute mark, getting a valuable 3 points for Sheffield, who really are having a good old go towards the back end of this season, beating Boldmere St Michael's last week, winning again this week. They are still at the foot of the Division 1 Midlands table, but still all to play for in this division. So we've got towards the bottom, we'll start there. Sheffield are 2 points away from safety with 2 games to go. Leek Town also 2 points away from safety with 2 games to go. Notts County, the team they are trying to catch. Leeford Athletic have done themselves wonders over the last couple of weeks. They are 3 points clear. Their goal difference is about the same though. So just one win either way could really do it for them, get themselves right back into the mix. Lincoln City, with just 2 games to go, or 3 in Leek Town's case, have probably now done enough. You're looking at 2 from these bottom 4. Difficulty again, Sheffield, as we've said, giving it a very good go, but I mean, they need either a win or 2 draws. They are away at Loughborough Lightning and at home to Sporting Cowser, who are both fighting hard at the top of the table. It doesn't get more difficult as a run-in than the top 2 for Sheffield, and they need a win or 2 draws. And if they were to get a win in one of those games, it would really throw open the fight at the top as well. Leek Town, 3 games to go after losing to Sheffield this weekend. Sutton Coldfield Town 7th, Peterborough United in 3rd, Solihull Moors in 6th. They have the much better running than Sheffield, but Sheffield have the form. And then if we look at the 2 teams that are outside of the relegation zone at the moment, Notts County take on Lincoln City this weekend and are then away at Northampton Town. I mean, Notts could do themselves a world of good by beating Lincoln. It would put them on level with Lincoln on 19 points and would probably see them safe after their promotion last season. Losing to Lincoln, you'd then look at it, particularly going to Northampton, where it's been announced that that's going to be at Sixfields. That's a tall order if they need to go there and get something. So Notts County really need to look at the game this weekend. And Leeford Athletic, just 2 games to go. They have Sporting Cowser, who are 2nd, and Peterborough United, who are 3rd. So it could well be very difficult for Leeford Athletic to pick up any more points. So it could well be that should Leek Town get, let's say, a victory against Sutton Coldfield Town, they would leapfrog Leeford Athletic. Now, Notts County would need a win from their final 2 games or 2 draws because their goal difference is so much worse. But Leeford Athletic are in no way safe at the moment. Towards the top, Peterborough United have 2 games to go. They are 6 points away from the title and a 13-goal deficit to make up. Leek Town at home and then Leeford Athletic at home. So they've got teams down towards the bottom, but you sense that they're not going to score enough goals in order to make up that goal difference to Loughborough. They beat Leek Town 3-1 earlier on in the season. They beat Leeford Athletic 5-1. So that's a goal difference of 6, which would put them on 29, and then need Loughborough to lose both of their games with a 7-goal swing. Very unlikely to happen, but while it's still mathematically possible, do need to talk about it. Realistically, though, it's down to the top 2. Loughborough Lightning, Sheffield at home this weekend, and then Lincoln City away on the final day of the season. Sporting Cowser, they have got Leeford Athletic away and Sheffield away. You would expect Sporting Cowser to win both of those games. Expects them to, doesn't mean that they will. Sporting Cowser need Loughborough to drop points. Doesn't matter if it's a draw or a loss, they just need them to drop points, because if they do become level with Loughborough, they will take the top spot because of their vastly superior goal difference. So Sporting, it is completely out of their hands. They are just hoping that somebody can pull off a shock against Loughborough Lightning. Loughborough have the advantage. I can't say that their running is particularly that much more difficult than Sporting Cowser. They've both got Sheffield. Loughborough have then got Lincoln. And Sporting have got Lee Field, so you're talking 12th and 8th against 12th and 9th, and it's, there's not a lot in it in the running, so that'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on. But really, 2 of 4 at the bottom and 1 of 2 at the top is likely the case in Division 1 Midlands. Right, Division 1 North then. 2 games to talk about. Leeds United 4, Chorley 1. So good 3 points for Leeds. They took the lead. Well, we're kind of saying they took the lead because, of course, Leeds don't have their own women's Twitter account, which means it gets lost amongst all the men, particularly when the men were playing at the same time. And Chorley haven't got the time on, don't really know. But anyway, so I don't know if this went 4-0 and then a consolation, or if Chorley went 1-0 up. But Jessica Rizu in the 7th and the 79th minute, Catherine Smith in the 76th and the 90th minute with the goals for Leeds, Saffron Newhouse with the only goal for Chorley, and then a hat-trick in the game between York City and Chester Street Town for Sophie Tinson, 2nd, 84th and 89th minute. That one, if you remember from last week's show, was a huge game towards the bottom of the table. For this reason, York City now out of the relegation zone with 3 games to play. They are a point clear of Chester Street Town. It also means FC United of Manchester, which we kind of knew anyway when I said on last week's show that they needed to win both games because the goal difference was so bad that drawing and winning a game wouldn't be enough for them. Well, now it is the worst possible goal difference they could have come up against. York City on -15, FC United of Manchester on -52. FC United of Manchester now must win both games in order to survive. It's their first year back after getting promoted last year. They got relegated the year before, bounced straight back. They now need to win both games if they are to survive, and they have got Doncaster Rovers Bells away and Hull City at home. It looks very unlikely unless Hull are already promoted by that point and completely take their eye off the ball. So you would say FC United of Manchester are probably down into Tier 5. The question, is it York or is it Chester Street Town who are going to be joining them? Because Chorley, you would say, they are 7 points clear of the relegation zone at the moment with 3 games to go, which means Chester Street Town, with a worse goal difference as well, must win all 3 games. Durham Sestra, Chorley and Leeds United, 4th, 5th and 9th, in order to catch up to Chorley. So is it going to be York or is it going to be Chester Street Town? York's final 3 games, Hull, Stockport and Middlesbrough, they have the much more difficult running than Chester Street Town, and it is so tight between those 2 teams that one could well come down to the final day. Towards the top, nothing has changed because nobody was playing. Leeds in 5th beat Chorley. As I've mentioned, they were the team that were the highest placed team that were playing this weekend. So the top 4 have had a weekend off in terms of league action. So it stays as it is. Hull City a point clear at the top, but with a game in hand as well. Durham Sestra can't catch them. Barnsley can catch them, and the goal difference is passable, but it would be quite a turnaround there. Middlesbrough, the ones who are in prime position with Norton, Stockton Ancients and York City to come. Hull City then know they just need 2 wins in order to secure promotion. They have York City, who are 10th, Leeds United, who are 5th, and FC United of Manchester, who are 12th. So Hull, you would think probably will get what they need, but of course it is not certain at all. Right, Division 1 South East then, 4 games to go through here. And we have a Cambridge derby. Cambridge United 3, Cambridge City 0. Cambridge United coming out on top of this one. Ruth Fox, Isabella Simmons and Harley Simpson with the goals for Cambridge United. Simmons in the 41st minute, Simpson in the 63rd and Fox in the 92nd. Bit of a surprise down towards the bottom. Haywards Heath Town drawing with Norwich City 1-1, a result which has meant Wimbledon have got one hand on the trophy. We'll look at that in a moment. But Ellie Smith put Norwich in front in the 72nd minute. Haywards Heath Town equalising through Storm Bailey in the 88th. And then we go down and also look at the top of the table, where Wimbledon beat London Seaward by 2-0. Sandra Martins in the 12th minute and Emily Donovan in the 70th minute means that Wimbledon, as we'll look at in a moment with the table, have got one hand on that trophy. Worthing 3, Ashford Town 3. Ashford Town, no lineup on full time yet, so no doubt the board are chasing them up to give them a fine. But Twitter research will give you a lot. Georgia Tibble then for Worthing in the 5th and the 83rd minute. And then one for Shannon Albury in the 42nd minute. Ashford Town 2 for Ashley Cheatley in the 14th and the 26th minute. And one for Renee Gardner in the 49th minute as well. Meant that the points were shared between those two teams. Southeast table, Wimbledon then not up yet, but are 9 points clear and with a goal difference 25 better than Norwich's. Norwich have 3 games left to play, so Norwich must win all 3. And after that 1-1 draw with Haywards Heath Town, they now host AFC Sudbury, then travel to Chesham and travel to Ashford. And it is very much, it has been for a while, out of their hands, but Wimbledon with 2 games to play, a point in the games against Worthing and Actonians would see them up. Now Worthing are in 3rd, could be a challenging one. Actonians in 5th could also be a challenging one, but they need just 1 point to get themselves into the Southern Premier Division. And even if they were to lose both of those games and Norwich were to win all 3 of their games, it looks highly likely that Norwich will fall short on goal difference. They need to be scoring 7-8 a game realistically, and hoping that Wimbledon fail to win either of their final 2. Cambridge City and Haywards Heath Town relegated. We knew that already. Division 1 Southwest then, 4 games to talk about, and a good week for AFC Bournemouth as they tried to close the gap on Exeter City and have done so successfully. In the week, they beat Southampton Women by 4-0. Gemma Hillier in the 5th minute, Molly Clark in the 9th, Lucy Cooper in the 18th, and Maisie Smith in the 24th. With a 4-0 victory. They then go at the weekend and host Torquay and win that by 5-0. Clark again, a hat-trick this time, 32nd, 43rd, 65th minute. One for Erin Bloomfield in the 53rd and one for Kenny Thompson in the 88th. One other game to tell you about. Keynsham Town 1, Abingdon United 3. Don't know who scored for Keynsham. They haven't put a lineup up. They don't do Twitter, and Abingdon didn't get it either. So Erin Hartigan, 57th minute, Molly Ligo Jackson, 72nd, and Lauren May in the 80th minute. What it means for the table, there has been no movement whatsoever. The only thing that's happened is Bournemouth, with their 2 games in hand on Exeter, have closed the gap back to 2 points. Those two still streaking ahead of the top. They are 14 and 16 points clear of Moneyfields in 3rd. They are probably going to win their 20th and 21st games, and then it is probably going to come down to the game between the 2 of them on the 5th of May. Winner takes all. And then down towards the bottom, of course, Chelsea already down. Torquay United now have 1 game less with which to try and catch the pack. As we've discussed previously, Portishead still have Chelsea to come, so that's 3 points for them. Yeah, it's very difficult now for Torquay. They have Portishead and Swindon to finish their season off, so they need to win the game this weekend against Portishead, but we will look at that in more detail later on. Great first season for Abingdon. They are comfortably safe. It is now just kind of a bit of wait until the 5th of May at the top, because we know it's going to be down between those two sides unless some something relatively shocking happens and Bournemouth drop more points, they've got Chelsea coming up. It's not going to happen there. Then they've got Moneyfields, which is the one that might be challenging for them, coming up against Moneyfields. But yeah, Chelsea down, Torquay United are in a big battle at the bottom of the table. Okay, so those are all of the results from the past 7 days and what they have meant for the table in the FAWNLs. So as you could see there, Tier 3 completely done. We've had all the teams promoted. We've had all 4 relegated. Tier 4 is now where it's at for the next few weeks. And it is just a case now of seeing there. We've still got 4 titles to decide. You've got one where Wimbledon have got their hands already on it. One I'm fairly sure will come down to the final day in Southwest. Midlands I'm fairly sure will come down to the final day. North may not. If Hull obviously win their game in hand, they'll pull themselves 4 points clear, and then it could be done 1 week early. But final day does seem like it may well be exciting for quite a few teams at the top and at the bottom. But we're coming now to a kind of new portion of the show, which particularly now that the show's got a new home on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, we can get much more interaction going on there than we could when it was on my account. So I asked earlier on in the week for your questions, your topics of discussion to go through on this week's show. And we've had some great ones, and thank you for those. So we'll start off with KingWolf84 on Twitter, who I know to be Nick. And he says, stadium and grounds in the FAWNL. Which is the best stadium? Which is the nicest ground? Which grounds is the most picturesque? And which are the ones to avoid? And it's a very complex, obviously, well, for starters, it's a 4-part question. And also, it's an interesting one because I haven't been, obviously, to all 72, so it's a difficult one to answer. But as you may or may not know, there is ground criteria. You can't just play anywhere. There are certain, you have to have a certain number of seats, loo availabilities, catering, etc., etc. And it's interesting to see how teams have moved around with that. You've got to look at the likes of Newcastle up at Kingston Park can hold 8,000 or more. And the facilities and what have you that go along with that are good. I know that Nick is a Wolves fan and he rates New Bucks Head very highly. It does look from pictures very nice as well. And we also have teams where they can't afford to rent facilities that are that good, and that is a part of it as well. Is the ones with better facilities are, as a general rule, there will be exceptions, have higher rents and what have you. But even then, there are some grounds which I've been disappointed with. And one that sticks out to mind with me there is Forest, going to play at Long Eaton. And it's, again, there's not a huge amount of parking. Unless you want to be parking on the grass and the other pitches. And it's one where the tunnel is down the middle of the stand, and they pull the like the cover out and everything when the players are going off. But because they can't have fans getting down the tunnel, they cordon that off after the game. But obviously, because the players are all doing autographs and it takes ages, they don't let you past for ages. So if you're on the wrong side of that tunnel, the only way to then get out is to walk the entire length of the pitch all the way around to then get out to your car again. So that was one. We'll ignore the fact it's in a completely different county to Nottinghamshire as well. So it's a very full-on question, and it's not a question that I feel like I'm in a great place to answer because I've not been to that many. And see, my other weekend work at the BBC stops me being able to travel around the country. So I've only really done, Forest and Notts, Derby, but that was when they were at Pride Park, and again I was there on work. So it's an interesting one to discuss. Obviously, there's some teams that have their own, some rent, some. So it is very similar, like, for want of a better phrase, like on a school playing field. Some have got better quality pitches because they're 3G over grass. So there is plenty to kind of diverge in that. But if you have a ground you particularly want to put forward as the best in the country, then do let me know at WFootballChat on Twitter. And of course, with the summer knockout tournament coming up, if you are particularly in favour of a certain team's ground, that could be a deciding factor when you try to put them through to the next round with your votes. The box actually here with all of the numbered balls in, ready for the preliminary round. I did sort that out the other day. It's all ready to go ahead of the summer knockout tournament, which may well start. And this is a may well, because it relies on teams, on the 23rd of May. So in about 5 weeks' time, the summer knockout might start. But yes, thanks for your question, Nick. Sorry I couldn't really give it a hugely great answer, but having not been to all 72 grounds, it's a difficult one to say. So then we go to Adams4423 on Twitter as well. Do you think there will be a significant increase in teams going semi-pro and pro next season due to the success of teams that have this season? Yes, short answer, yes, I do. Because I think teams will see it as an easy way. Well, I say easy way, but teams will see it as that is the way you get out of this league. I am concerned about it though, and I think the better way to do it is to expand the top 2 teams so that those that can afford to and want to go semi-pro and fully pro can go into the Super League and into the Championship, and they can become more substantial leagues, and they can be there. And then, not saying the FAWNL should stay as an amateur league entirely. It might be that the odd one or two, go kind of semi-professional. My concern with lots of teams becoming semi-pro and pro all at once, and there only being one spot in each division to go up into the Championship, is how sustainable it's going to be putting all this money in and not seeing the reward for it. We see, like in the men's game as well, teams will pour money in to try and get promoted into the Premier League, into the next league, whatever it is, don't manage to do so, and then because they were at risk of falling foul of financial fair play, I know that's not a factor here, but you'll get where I'm going with it, because they're scared of falling foul of that, they then have to sell everybody. The team they then get in the next year is not very good, and they end up really struggling. The concern with the women's game is, let's say you've got 4 teams in the Northern Prem and the Southern Prem that go fully pro and semi-pro, but only one of them can go up. So you've got 3 teams that have put all that money in, whether it's sustainable or not, and then they don't get anything out of it. And then a team comes down and maybe they stay fully pro or semi-pro, and then those 4 all try again, and 3 don't make it. And then they try again and they don't make it. And then they try again and they might not make it. And you've tried 3 or 4 years to get yourself into the Super League or the Championship, primarily the Championship in this case. And it's not, and you don't make it, you're not successful. Does that then leave you in a situation where you can no longer support that fully pro semi-pro model, and as a result the women's program at that club ends up going backwards or folding entirely because it's not profitable, which is not the point of it, particularly at this level, but it's what the big bosses look at the end of the day. So that's my concern with lots of teams doing it. If we don't end up in a situation where, say, the Super League and the Championship expands to 16 each, say. So the top two leagues have gone from 24 to 32 in two lots of 16. There's then 8 more spaces for teams to go up into those top 2 tiers, and then you're looking at, okay, well, we can now look at not necessarily promoting 4 teams, but they can apply. So you've got your Forests, who are on this hybrid model, and there is talk of them going fully pro. Your Burnleys, Stoke have gone semi-pro, although that's gone really well for them, hasn't it? We'll get onto that later. Wolves, if they put the money in, I know Derby have started to put a little bit in, but they've not had a very good year. You move into the south, you're looking at the likes of Ipswich, Rugby, Oxford. Did they want to move themselves up into that second tier? And I think particularly in tier 3, less so in tier 4, it's what we've seen this season with all this movement, is that you look at tier 3, particularly in the Northern Premier Division. I think it kind of already happened in the south. It's happening now in the north. You've got Newcastle, huge backing men's club in the Prem. Burnley, huge backing men's club in the Prem. Forest, huge backing men's club in the Prem. Wolves, men's club in the Prem, not getting backed, and they've done a really good job. Stoke, semi-pro, what have you. Liverpool Feds Independent have done really well this year. Then you've got West Brom, Derby, and then you get down. But the point is, if you look at the tier 3 North table and then relate it directly back to the men's sides, you've got first Prem team, second Prem team, third Prem team, fourth Prem team, fifth Championship, sixth Independent, 7th Championship, 8th League One about to be Championship, and then you've got Halifax, nobody, Stourbridge, yes, there's a men's team, but they're not like in the pro tiers. Huddersfield only use the name. Fylde, again, men's team are down in National League North. The teams with men's teams doing well are at the top, and the teams with no men's teams are at the bottom. And I think it did. We were discussing this the other week, and they're saying, is that happening in the south? And it's not, because I think it's already happened in the south. You look at your Arsenals, your Palaces, your Spurs, your West Hams, all already up there. Portsmouth have just won League One. Hashtag have done things themselves, but they have got money behind them. Rugby Borough Independent, they've just come down. Again, Oxford League One, Ipswich, Milton Keynes Dons are 2, Cheltenham are down there, Cardiff City obviously Independent, Plymouth are down in the lower divisions, Billericay, Chatham, London, they're down there again. So you do sort of see it. It's not quite as obvious as in the north, but you do sort of see it. So yes, I think we are going to see more teams going pro, semi-pro. My concern is, in a few years' time, if the top leagues don't get expanded, is that going to be a problem for these teams moving forward? I hope it's not. I'm concerned it might be. Right, and then there is one question that's come through from Mark Lancaster. And he does preface this with saying maybe discussion for another week. And I am going to do it on another week because it needs to have its due diligence. Would be football-related injuries, and one of the criteria for a Tier 3 team at least should be health insurance for the players. And this, of course, is coming off the back of Kaylee McDonald, who has had to put a GoFundMe on to raise the £20,000 for her ACL surgery. And because she can't walk at the moment, she can't work, and there is obviously no support. The GoFundMe is going well. The point is, it shouldn't be necessary. And a lot of people are, see them piling onto Stoke and going, you're going semi-pro. You announced on the same day that you're putting like 12 million into stuff at the ground and the training facilities for the men, but you can't find £20,000 for one of your women's players. As I said, I'm not going to get into it now because I want to do its due diligence next week. because it is a very in-depth topic, and I don't want to just skirt over it in a couple of minutes, because this is the case that's been highlighted at the moment. There have been cases before, there will be cases in the future, but we need to do it in the right way. So I'm going to look at that probably next week. But he did also come in with another question. And he said, although it probably wouldn't have made any difference at the end of the day, it was noticeable that both Tier 3 league winners didn't have to play any midweek games this season, which can affect a lot of teams where players have to mix work, travelling and playing. And this became a bit of a thread with a couple of other people, especially when you think Newcastle are full-time professional footballers and don't have day jobs to manage alongside football at all. Get that other teams can't travel to them midweek, but they could travel. A season of 22 games should fit into 36, 40 weekends unless a team has 2 very good cup runs. The main thing is to make county cup games midweek or exclude Tier 3 teams from the competition. Now, yes, the 2 sides that got promoted, Newcastle and Portsmouth, didn't have any midweek games this season. Now, it's a really difficult one because I can completely get the argument. They are fully pro, particularly Newcastle. They are fully pro. They should, they haven't got another job to get in the way. They could go everywhere. But the league handbook is the league handbook, and you have to be able for midweek to travel within an hour 45. And just because of the geography of the league, both Newcastle and Portsmouth didn't have another team in their league within an hour 45. So you risk, if you make them travel with a one rule for you situation, which isn't fair, and they do have to write rules of competition, and the clubs will stick by it. But I can also then completely see the fact that you've got a team in that league who have got, shop workers, nurses, students, whatever, in the team, and they are having to try and get a team together on a Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, and travel an hour and a half each way for a 7:45 game, which finishes at 9:30, to then get back to base at 11, for the players to then all go back home for 11:30, midnight, and then get up for work the next day. And then you've got a fully professional team that aren't having to do that. So I can completely see all the sides of it. Yes, we should have no problem fitting the season in, but we have had horrendous weather this year. We really have. It's caused a lot of postponements. The problem with county cups is they are down to the counties and completely out of control of the FAWNL. And that also means that they can decide when the games are on. There is a designated county cup day. It's the 3rd Sunday of each month. Whether the counties stick to that or not, again, is down to them, and the FAWNL have got to work around that. County cup takes priority. But also midweek games aren't always possible, because not every county cup team, if you're talking about a Tier 7 side, have got floodlights, so they can't necessarily play midweek. The other thing there, or exclude Tier 3 sides. Again, that's down to the individual counties. Nottinghamshire FA doesn't allow FAWNL teams into its competition, which is a move I can completely get, because I can remember just before COVID, the final was Forest women's first team against Forest women's reserve team, and they both won their semi-finals like 11-0 and 9-0 respectively. So it was a bit ridiculous. There are some counties, like the Birmingham FA, that have 2 separate competitions. A 6 and 7, or it might be a 5, 6 and 7. No, it's a 6 and 7, and then a 3 and 4, 3, 4 and 5 competition. So you don't get a Tier 3 side coming up against a Tier 7 side and winning 26-0. Or, like the Norfolk FA, yes, Norwich are in it, but they don't come in until the quarterfinals. It's a bit like the FA Cup, it's all seeded. which is another good way of doing it. Yes, you should be able to fit it into a season. The weather has been very bad. The FA Cup obviously takes priority. You then got county cups in there as well. You've got a League Cup and a League Plate competition. It is challenging to fit it in. And I can remember before the previous FAWNL board left, they said, we make the fixtures at the start of the season and have every intention not to touch those fixtures again for the rest of the year. Inevitably, you end up having to touch the fixtures, but they aim not to. Now, and again, one of the reasons I got this board was to kind of help keep track of everything and see potential problems down the line. One of the potential problems, Forest against Halifax, still not on the system. Halifax don't have any spare weekends. Forest are too far away to travel midweek. They're having to try and find a middle ground to play that game. Whether they will or not now, because Halifax can't get relegated, Forest can't win the title. It is a nothing game anyway, so whether they'll play it or not, we don't know. That's by the by. So it is difficult to do. Obviously, in an ideal world, everybody plays the same number of midweek games or none at all, but it just doesn't happen, like that. And this isn't the men's game where we can just change things at the drop of a hat, and you get thousands of fans going, and you've got pitch availabilities and player availabilities and all the rest of it to consider. So yeah, I think the fact that the league winners didn't play any midweek games may have been a factor, because they are able to have better recovery and what have you. They haven't got to play Sunday, Tuesday, Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday towards the end of the season. In Newcastle's case, I think they were probably going to win the league anyway. Hashtag United, really pushed Portsmouth all the way. I think Hashtag United were, I want to say their league position has been elevated somewhat. I think that Hashtag United were beneficiaries early on in the season, beating Oxford, beating Ipswich, beating Portsmouth, beating Rugby on consecutive weeks. 4 weeks in a row. I think they perhaps were the beneficiaries of teams taking them a bit for granted, which is entirely on the other teams, but going, they've just come up, it won't be an issue, and it turned into an issue. Are they 12 points that they are not necessarily going to get next year, or that they will have to work a lot harder for next year? Second half of the season, okay, they did the double over Oxford, but they then lost to Ipswich. They did the double over Rugby as well, but lost to Portsmouth. So okay, there's is that some points, 6-9 points they don't get next year? And then if you were to knock that off, for example, Portsmouth are like 13 points clear of everybody else. Do I think it was the deciding factor? No. Is it a contributing factor? Possibly. Is it just luck of the draw because they just happen to be nowhere near everybody else? Yeah. If there was a team within an hour 45 of Newcastle, Newcastle would have had to have played midweek games. If there was a team within an hour 45 of Portsmouth, Portsmouth would have had to have played midweek games. They'd have still been scheduled in, and they would have had to have played them. It was just luck of the draw. I think that's as far as it goes. All right, those are, I believe, the questions from this week. Yes, they are. So thank you so much for your questions. At WFootballChat on Twitter is the place to go to put your questions in for next week's show. As I said, I want to look at those injuries in the GoFundMe in more detail. And that is the place to go to get your questions and topics, or of course the comments below this video as well. Right, let's quickly then go through the fixtures coming up this week. We will very, very quickly run through the Northern and Southern Premier Divisions, because none of these games actually matter at all. Farnborough against Huddersfield, the bottom two, they come up against each other at Kellerman Park. Burnley against Liverpool Feds. That's at Turf Moor. So if you go in there, have a good time. Halifax host Newcastle at Southern Stadium. Stoke also at the men's stadium, the Bet365 stadium against West Bromwich Albion. Wolves take on Forest at Newbucks Head, and then on Wednesday, Wolves take on Derby. So both teams from the East Midlands travelling across to Wolves this week. Southern Premier Division. Ipswich Town against Cardiff. That is now a 1 o'clock kickoff. If you're going to that game, make sure you get there in plenty of time. It's a 1 o'clock start. Billericay Town against Plymouth, 9th against 10th, but again, these sides are all safe now. Cheltenham welcome the league winners Portsmouth. London Bees take on Rugby. Oxford United against MK Dons, and # United against Chatham Town, a 3 o'clock start there, so don't turn up too early. Division 1 Midlands then, 5 games to look at, and obviously Tier 4 is where it starts to get much more interesting. So Boldmere St Michael's against Solihull Moors. That's a mid-table game with nothing on the line. Leafield Athletic against Sporting Cows, and 9th against 2nd. Loughborough Lightning take on Sheffield. That is 1st against 12th. So those are the top 2 playing teams down towards the bottom. Notts County against Lincoln City. That one's at Meadow Lane. 2 p.m. start for that. And Leek Town against Sutton Coldfield Town. That is 11th against 7th. So in Division 1 Midlands, 2 teams towards the top, 2 teams towards the bottom in action. Huge games across the Midlands this week. Division 1 North, a full programme, but Doncaster Rovers Bells against FC United of Manchester is at the Eco Power Stadium, and that is a Saturday 7 o'clock kickoff. That's after the men, I believe, on Saturday, a 7 o'clock kickoff. There, FC United of Manchester need at least a point or they will be down. Chorley against Barnsley is 9th against 3rd. Barnsley must win. They have a very, very outside chance. They might not by the end of Sunday anyway. Durham Cester against Chester Street Town, 4th against 11th. Tough weekend for the teams towards the bottom because Hull City have York City. And if Hull get anything from that game, Barnsley can no longer win the league. So you've got, FC United and Manchester have got Doncaster are 7th, Chester Street have got 4th, and York have got 1st. Norton Stockton Ancients in 8th have Middlesbrough in 2nd, and Stockport County in 6th have Leeds United in 5th. Division 1 South East then, again, title could be won this weekend. The relegation's already decided, so this league could be next to be done because we'll start down towards the bottom. If AFC Wimbledon get anything from the game against Worthing, they will be champions. Equally, if Norwich City fail to beat AFC Sudbury, then Wimbledon will be champions. Elsewhere, Actonians against London Seaward is 5th against 8th. Ashford against Haywards Heath Town is 6th against 12th. Chesham against Queen's Park Rangers is 9th against 4th. And then on Wednesday, Queen's Park Rangers host London Seaward, which is 4th against 8th. 2 sides, again, just playing out the season. And finally, Division 1 South West. Again, full programme this weekend plus 1 in the week. AFC Bournemouth against Chelsea. That is Bournemouth in 2nd, Chelsea at the bottom of the table. Abingdon in 5th take on Swindon in 4th. Abingdon won't overtake Swindon with a win because their goal difference is so much lower. But they could close that gap up to level. Exeter City take on Bridgewater United. Maidenhead United against Keynsham Town is 8th against 7th. Moneyfields against Southampton Women's is 3rd against 9th. And Torquay United against Portishead Town. This is the big one, really, because Torquay United, in my view, have to win this game. Because Portishead have got Chelsea. So if they don't win this game, Torquay won't catch Portishead. And then Torquay having to play Swindon, who are in 4th on the final day of the season. It's unlikely they're going to get a win there as well. They must win and then hope the goal difference switches between them and Southampton Women's. And then on Wednesday, Portishead Town take on Bridgewater United. Portishead, as you can have played 18 games. Teams around them have played 20. So Portishead having a busy end to the season. And then there is just one more game to discuss. and that game is the FAWNL Plate final between Cambridge United and Derby County. This is being played at Broadhurst Park, which is the ground of FC United of Manchester. That's 2 p.m. On Sunday. Cambridge United taking on Derby County for the FAWNL Plate. So best of luck to both of those sides. And that will do it for this week's episode of the Women's Football Chat. Thank you very much for watching and or listening to this week's show. As I said, thank you to those who sent their questions in. If you want to get questions or discussion topics in for next week's show, then at W Football Chat is the place to do it. And at W Football Chat is the new home of this show. So make sure you give it a follow for all of the up-to-date information regarding the FAWNL. As the season now, there are just 3 weekends remaining of the season and still a lot to play for as well. So thank you very much for watching and or listening to this week's Women's Football Chat. I'll be back next Thursday at 6 p.m. bringing you the very latest from the 3rd and 4th tiers of women's football here in England. But for now, goodbye.